All right. And now we are ready to go. So I am going to share my screen. We have some slides to get through, and we did have a good number of folks sign up to join us this evening. So we are trying our best to answer the questions that a lot of you thoughtfully submitted when you RSVP'd for this session. If you do have questions as we go through, feel free to jot them down in the chat. What I'm going to try to do, just since we have so many this evening, is to pull the big questions that I'm seeing and make sure we try to answer those at the end. We hope, and since we've had at least one practice round now, that will answer a lot of the questions that you may have. But if we aren't able to answer your question during the session, you all have my email, so feel free to reach out to me and we'll make sure we triage it with the team so that we can get your questions answered. So we will get going. And again, any questions, please jot them in the chat. Even if I'm speaking, we'll make sure that we keep an eye on them as we go along. All right, so what we're going to start with today is a brief overview of C3. Many of you are probably super familiar with C3 at this point, don't have a lot of questions, but we do just like to do the reminder so we kind of set that foundation as we get going on the changes that we'll be talking about. And then we will get into some of the updates for November that you'll be seeing. So there's a couple things that folks should be aware about that are new. One is we're going to have an attestation to accept childcare financial assistance as a new
Ok, vamos
requirement.
limpiándotela. Solo vamos a poner.
All right. So we're going to have a new attestation to make sure that folks who are using C3 are attesting that they are willing to accept healthcare financial assistance. And then we're going to go over some very basic details about childcare financial assistance. If you there, we will direct you to places where you can get more details on how to go through that process as well, though. And then we'll talk about fund use requirement that's new. This is for center-based programs only, though. So if you are a family childcare program, this is not one that will be changing for you. And then we'll close up with some of the things that will be going on in the future. I'll call out now, and I'm sure Ellen will too when she talks about the formula. A lot of folks have asked us questions about what things look like for this year, since their grant amount had been the same for the past year. In November, we're using that to refresh your grant amounts. So if your program has grown since last year, we will also be doing that. So I did want to call that out at the front too, since that was a burning question for a lot of people. So a quick overview of C3. Again, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with C3, but wanting to make sure we're all starting from the same place. But they are non-competitive and provide operational funding to eligible licensed EEC programs that are open and serving families in Massachusetts. General fund use, you can use these for workforce investments, improvements to program quality, like for supplies, curriculum, and other screening tools, or for things that help support your business, like your rent, mortgage payments, utilities, or different improvements to your program itself. Insurance is a big one too. So that is what C3 can be used. Alicia will get in for, again, just for our center-based programs, that there is a change for the workforce requirements part there. But again, that is just for center-based programs. I'm going to pass it over to Ellen to kind of walk us through the formula in a couple of slides, and then I'll be coming back towards the end to talk about next steps. Ellen, go ahead.
Thank you, Eugenia. To give people a quick overview on how the current C3 formula works, the C3 formula is comprised of three major components. We have the license capacity, which is adjusted for enrollment, the base rate, which also then further differentiates based on program type, staffing, and ages served, and the equity adjustment. These three components multiply together result in the monthly grant award that goes to programs. Using this monthly grant award, we also calculate the annual C3 allocation. The annual allocation amount is applied to specific programs, specifically the for-profit programs with more than 10 sites, where there is a 1% cap on funds that they are able to receive in a year, which is no more than $4.75 million. On the next slide, I'll go into a little more detail about the specifics of each of these components. Here we see a bit more detail on the various components of the formula previously mentioned. For license capacity, we adjust the license capacity by enrollment. What this means is we look at the program's average annual enrollment for the past 12 months using a 75% enrollment threshold for a program to use their full license capacity in the formula calculation. Next, in the second component, we have the base rate. This base rate you can see has listed specific amounts based on the program type, youngest age served in the case for center-based. For family childcare, we look at whether or not there's an assistant. And for both these program types, we take into consider the hours of operation, whether or not a program is full-time or part-time. Further, the base rate is multiplied by an equity adjustment. The equity adjustment is divided into 3 different tiers, each having their own multiplier. For example, for a program to qualify for Tier 1, there's 3 different criteria. The first being if they serve 25% or more of children receiving EEC Child Care Financial Assistance or CCFA. That percent is calculated based on a 12-month look back, and we take the highest percent reported in those past 12 months, and that is used to determine which tier as one criteria for one of the tiers. You can see further the different tiers carry their own multiplier amount and also carry their own criteria as well. Next slide, please. So what are the updates that are coming into effect this November? The formula that we just reviewed is not changing. What may be changing is the amount that programs are receiving once the formula resets based on the program's inputs. For example, if your enrollment has changed within the average enrollment has changed in the past 12 months, which is different from when you might have applied last November, then your grant amount might change this November. Similarly, if the number of children receiving CCFA has changed, then that might also affect your grant amount to change. We highly encourage programs to submit their November application as soon as possible so they understand what amount they will be receiving for the next 12 months. Again, as a reminder, same as last year, based on the November application, that will set a static or fixed amount that programs will receive for the next 12 months. Other updates that are in effect starting November are we are adding a new attestation per statutory requirement that requires all programs receiving C3 to demonstrate a willingness to enroll children receiving CCFA. And we'll talk a little more in detail about what that looks like in terms of the application and next what programs have to do to attest. Additionally, starting in November as well, for center-based programs only, there is a new expectation that 50% of C3 funding will be applied to workforce investments. And we'll also talk about this requirement in more detail. Lastly, since C3 is level funded again at $475 million for fiscal year 26. We are currently managing access to new providers based on funding availability. What this means is that each quarter, the department assesses whether or not we can allow new programs to participate in C3 based on the funding available. The next time we will be making this assessment is at the end of this quarter, December. So the next assessment will be in January, is anticipated for January 2026. Okay. Next slide, please. Thank you. For the attestation will appear for all programs each month on the C3 application, and programs will need to attest affirmatively to this attestation in order to receive C3 funds. You can see the specific language for the attestation in the gray box below on the slide, and you can also see the language that you are attesting to if you say yes, if your program has an available spot that and a family is receiving EC, childcare financial assistance, that you are willing to work with a childcare resource and referral agency to enter into a voucher agreement. This attestation will appear for all programs, regardless of whether or not you already have signed a voucher agreement or have a contract in place. This attestation does not require programs to have a voucher agreement in place at the time they are attesting. We also are not requiring programs to change their current operations or to hold a seat specifically for children with CCFA in order to meet this attestation. This attestation is to demonstrate a willingness to enroll children receiving CCFA if they were to have an interest in enrolling in your program. For programs that attest no, they will be unenrolled from C3, meaning they will no longer receive C3 funds and will no longer participate in C3. We are also offering programs an opportunity to submit an administrative review if there are barriers that prevent them from participating in CCFA and therefore attesting yes. For those programs where you think there might be a barrier to participating in CCFA, we encourage you to start your application where there will be an option for you to share your reason and explain why your program may not be able to participate in CCFA. Lastly, for all the programs that are attesting, we will be sharing this information publicly on our sister website on the Education to Career or E2C Hub for transparency, so everyone is aware of the programs that are open to accepting children receiving CCFA. And now I will pass the presentation over to Tyrese to talk about CCFA in a little more detail.
Thanks, Ellen. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tyrese Nicholas, Deputy Commissioner for Family Access and Engagement. Here at EEC, I oversee all things family access, and that includes childcare financial assistance, our Head Start State Collab office, as well as our Office of Family and Community Support. Before I get started, I just want to take a moment to recognize something really important, and that is childcare financial assistance is critical to support, is a critical support for many families. It helps parents work, go to school, and keep their children in a safe and caring place. We also know that not every family who needs care or who needs help paying for care can get it right now, as access to childcare financial assistance is limited. So we just want to take a moment to acknowledge that it is limited, and there may be families who are struggling to pay for care, but we also want to acknowledge too that we want them to have the opportunity to have access to as many different providers as possible given their needs. Today, we're going to focus on two things: a general overview of what childcare financial assistance is and what it means to become a childcare financial assistance provider. With that, we're going to go right into a high-level overview of childcare financial assistance and what it covers. So we call childcare financial assistance CCFA for short. It's a state-funded program that essentially helps families with low and moderate incomes or families involved with DTA or DCF pay for childcare. Here at EEC, we administer childcare financial assistance across 3 programs, and that's income eligible, Department of Transitional Assistance related, and Department of Children and Families related care. Families access these programs either through the wait list for our income eligible families or through a direct referral from DCF or DTA for our DTA and our DCF families. At its core, childcare financial assistance exists to help families work, seek out education opportunities, and or stabilize life transitions. Now that we know what CCFA is, I'm going to talk about what it covers. So CCFA covers a wide range of childcare services and set in different settings. It provides care for infants, for toddlers, preschoolers, and our school-age children. That's including before and after school care, and also summer programming and out of school time, let's say during break. So your winter, your spring, as well as your summer break. Families can use their CCFA at a licensed center, a licensed family child care home, or what we call license exempt programs, which we call like, let's say drop-in centers, like a Boys and Girls Club, and in some of the after-school programs in some of the schools. CCFA providers provide families with options that match their needs. Next slide. Now we're going to talk about who provides these services. So a CCFA provider is a licensed childcare provider who accepts vouchers as payment for childcare services. Key to note is that eligibility starts with a provider being licensed by EEC. So you have to be licensed and approved, and in being licensed and approved, you're following EEC's rules for safety and attendance, as well as payment once you become a CCFA provider. To be a provider, it means that you're agreeing to accept the EEC daily reimbursement rate for those childcare services you're providing. So EEC has a rate connected to each age for a child. And as the CCFA provider, you would be agreeing to accept that rate. You will also be ensuring that you're working with our Child Care Resource and Referral Agency, also known as CCR&Rs. And as a part of that, you would share what your program private rates are, what your parent handbook is, also what is your current schedule for closures and holidays, that sort of information. You would be providing all of that to your Child Care Resource and Referral Agency. And then the last thing, which is pretty key, is you're just going to ensure that all children in your program, whether they're receiving childcare financial assistance or not, are receiving the same type of care and the same type of access. Next slide, please. And what you'll see here is a very high level, just the steps to become a childcare financial assistance provider. So the starting point to become a childcare financial assistance provider is to connect with your childcare resource and referral agency. You can do that. You'll see it in the chat. There's a tool that we call our CCR&R search tool. You would put in your zip code and it will tell you what is the closest CCR&R in your area. You would contact that CCR&R and they would schedule you to attend an orientation. So an orientation, it could be either a group orientation or it could be a one-on-one. It varies from CCR&R to CCR&R. Once you complete the orientation, you'll complete different required documents. Some of those documents are listed on the screen ahead of you. So you'll have to show your license or your license exempt approval, your tuition rates, as we talked about before, your schedule, and your parent handbook. Once you've completed your required documentation, then you'll move into the phase 4, which is like signing the provider voucher agreement. What's a part of signing that voucher agreement is understanding what it all means. So yes, you provided these required documents, but it includes understanding how to enter in attendance, how to receive payment, when's the due date for submitting your attendance. So all the things connected directly to receiving payment from EEC for the child care financial assistance. So once you've completed the training and the understanding of what it truly means to be a child care financial assistance provider, then you would sign the voucher agreement and you would be able to start receiving families. Next slide. Now, once you're a provider, there are some things to just note for those family childcare providers. The pathway for family childcare providers may look different, and so we're just going to talk about it here on this slide. In Massachusetts, there are two different types of family childcare providers. There are independent family childcare providers, and then there are family childcare providers that work with the system. What you'll see, we say family childcare system providers. The difference is one is working independently and the other one is working with the system that is supporting the provider they're independent, but they're receiving the additional support. So I'm just going to go quickly over some of the different responsibilities and what it looks like. So if you're an independent family childcare provider, that means you're handling all of your paperwork, all your administrative level paperwork, including enrollment for different children. You will be working directly with the Child Care Resource and Referral Agency to receive your referrals or interest from families. If you're working with the system will be providing the support, assisting with those administrative tasks related to training and some of your business operations as it relates to child care financial assistance families. You would also be receiving referrals directly from the system, and the work you would be doing related to child care financial assistance would be directly with your family child care system. For independent family child care providers, you sign your voucher agreement with the CCR&R. If you're working with the family child care system, you would be signing an agreement with the family child care system who has a signed agreement already with the CCR&R in the area. What's key is in making these decisions is your preference as a family child care provider. If you prefer to have full independence and control of all of your program, you would tend to lean on staying an independent family child care provider. If you're a provider who prefers the additional support or need help with the administrative tasks that would be related to child care financial assistance, you might sign up with the family child care system. What you should expect, depending on what option you choose or where you fall, is your ability to manage the work that comes with being a child care financial assistance provider and the way that you're managing your program. One means more independence, and the other means less independence, but typically more support. Next slide, please. Now we're going to talk about what CCFA pays. So CCFA has reimbursement rates that are set by EEC, and they're dependent upon provider type, so center-based or family child care, and then the region you live in and the age of the child, or we like to say the age grouping. So infant, toddler, preschool, or school age, and then lastly, the level of care the child may be receiving, whether that care is full-time or part-time. What you'll see on the top right is the rates for center-based providers, and on the bottom is the rates for family childcare. The difference to note is that the center-based rates are based off of infant, toddler, preschool, and school age. And for family childcare, it's based on whether the child is under 2 or over 2. Additional information related to payments is directly connected to whether a family may have a parent fee or also known as a co-pay fee. So when a family's child care financial assistance is determined, there are families who are required to have the parent fee, meaning that a partial of the a part of the daily reimbursement fee from EEC, they must cover, and that parent fee is paid directly to the provider, whether it's a center-based provider or the family child care provider. Those payments are not received by EEC. Also, key to note is that CCFA providers are paid once monthly, and those payments are reimbursed. That means as a CCFA provider, you are providing the child care services in 1 month and you're being reimbursed the next month for the previous month's services. Next slide, please. Now that we've covered payments, let's look at how families get connected to programs. So earlier I spoke about CCR&Rs and family child care systems and how they support. So the way that our families, CCFA families, get connected to a CCFA provider is through our CCR&Rs and our statewide helpline or 211, what we call Mass 211, and also through our family child care system, in addition to direct referrals from DTA and DCF. What happens with the CCR&R and Mass 211? A family reaches out, they say they're interested, they're looking for care in a certain area, and the CCR&R or Mass 211 would give the family a list of providers in that area that accept child care financial assistance, and they would connect them to you. That connection happens through a phone call. It may happen through the family coming in to visit your center or your family child care home. And then the family would say, hey, do you have a spot? I'm interested. And then the connection would continue from there. The family would go through the regular enrollment process into your program and then complete the process with the CCR&R or the family child care system to enroll the family into your program. The other side of that is that after you've done the enrollment and the child starts attending, after that first month of attendance, you would start to receive your monthly payment for services. And that completes our walkthrough of CCFA. I'm going to turn it over to Alicia to talk about the new fund use requirement.
Thank you, Tyrese. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alicia Sarian Wells. I'm the Senior Associate Commissioner for Program Integrity here at EEC. And I'm going to talk to you about the fund use requirement. This requirement is only applicable to center-based programs, and center-based programs are also known as large or small group and school-age programs as determined by EEC licensing. This fund use requirement is not applicable to family child care programs. This new C3 grant funds requirement ensures 50% of what is granted is used towards workforce investments. For example, if your program's C3 monthly amount is $100,000, then $50,000 of those funds must be allocated towards workforce investments. Workforce investments include personnel costs, which include salaries, benefits, stipends, and other supports for recruitment and retention. Workforce investments also include professional development and other investments to support staff in building educator qualifications. So we understand that providers need to consider C3 as one of many funding sources, so they have to look at their program finances holistically. Next slide, please. So what EEC is going to do to support programs in this new requirement is to provide technical assistance. And to take some preliminary steps to meet the fund use requirement, we're asking you to look at this holistically. So step one, you would review your current funding streams from all sources, whether it is federal, state, or private funds. Examples of some of these funding streams include CCFA, Head Start, funding from the Department of Education, or other private sources where you may have grants like the United Way. Step two, you would review what funding is paying for which staff. In some cases, there are multiple funding streams that are paying for specific staff. Therefore, allocation is calculated by FTE, full-time equivalent, by hours, or by location. This review should also include any anticipated staff if you have any vacancies at your program. Next, you would make note of all of the funding restrictions, any funding allowability, and staffing expectations. These restrictions would be included in applicable RFRs, contract conditions, or other contract agreements. Lastly, work with leadership staff within your program, senior leadership or organization to make the allowable changes to staff funding. Internal communication is critical when discussing, reviewing, and revising where there's allowability. Organizations should also work with their CPAs as well. In order to support our programs in meeting this new fund use requirement, EEC will be hosting training and technical assistance sessions in early 2026. More information regarding these sessions will be forthcoming. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Eugenia.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alicia. And I will remind folks again, if you didn't catch it, these requirements that Alicia just talked about are just for center-based programs. If you're a family child care program, you do not have to worry about that. And you will probably be getting emails from me if you are a center-based program on how to access those trainings. We really thank Alicia for her expertise and willingness to make sure that folks have a smooth transition into this new requirement for center-based programs. We're going to chat a little bit about kind of like what to expect going forward. If folks kind of heard everything from our experts of Ellen, Tyrese, and Alicia, and still have questions that you want us to try to cover today, you can drop those in the chat. We'll try to get to what we can tonight, but now's a great time to throw those in if you have any that you'd like us to cover. I did just want to say that a thank you. When we talk about C3, we usually are sharing a great deal of thanks. The effort that you take to fill out those monthly recertifications is hugely appreciated. It helps us figure out our work at EEC. And we also thank you for everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces who've come to info sessions with us before, who attended the public comment period to help us think about the next steps for C3 as well, or have kind of raised their voices to share about like what they'd like to invest in and what they wish the department kept in mind. So just a huge thank you to all of you who take the time and effort. I will remind people that as we are going forward, the quarterly deadlines are very important. As Ellen talked about in her section of the presentation, we use those quarterly deadlines to kind of make sure that we know how much money we have for C3 for the rest of the fiscal year. We don't want to make mid-year changes on anyone. So we're using those as opportunities to kind of see where we're at, see if we can let in new programs. So those quarterly deadlines are hugely important. The next one that we have coming up is December 31st. So you will need to get the recertifications in for October, November, and December by December 31st. And then that door will close. We'll assess where we're at, and we start a new quarter, 3 months, and go forward with that. We are continuing to look at public comment. So a lot of folks raised their voices in the public comment period to share with us how they're using C3, how they would like to use C3, what they wanted the department to keep in mind. And that has been hugely helpful. I think overwhelmingly we saw that programs asked for us to kind of keep the formula the same this year, which was very helpful to hear. But they also shared things that they would like to see going forward as well. So we are reviewing all of that. A lot of people brought up the different ways C3 has benefited their program and how they would like to be able to do more as well. I will say too, we are very grateful for the $475 million that we have for C3. But if we are to make significant changes to C3, we would need more funding in order to do so. So we are looking at the budget cycle this year, and we will be chatting with the field as that process goes through to see what C3 could look like in the future. And that funding amount will mean a great deal to whether we can make changes or not, as the money we have right now really does cover the folks that we have in today. That is, so we will make sure that as that process goes along between the budget cycle and as we're reviewing the public comments from September, that will keep the channels of communication open with you. We have been very, very grateful for all the feedback that we've gotten kind of throughout C3, and we will make sure to continue to have sessions like these or info sessions or public comment periods where you can come and share feedback with us about the program as we go forward as well. And before we make any changes, we will always be bringing things to the board to make sure that there's a formal public presentation on what we're proposing and have an opportunity for folks to weigh in on that. So in the spring, we'll probably bring something for the next fiscal year, which starts in July, to make sure that folks know kind of what C3 looks like going forward. And that is all that I have. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see all of you a little bit better. And I'm going to start to look into the chat. I will to invite my EC colleagues if there's anything that you want to clarify as you're looking at the chat or you're seeing something that you'd like to address to feel free to jump in. And then for folks watching as well, if you have a question that has not been answered yet, to feel to drop it in that. Before I get into questions, I will call out that we will be sending out the slides in the recording. So if you missed sections because you have things going on at the end of a very busy day, no worries. We'll make sure that you get the recording and also the slides. So I'm going to stop hitting record and then we're going to jump into the questions. So